Hello and welcome to another Sunday edition of Gin with Gwynne. I'm Oliver Gwynne and this is where we talk about marketing, data and philosophy. This week, my disdain for the cottage industry. Not real cottages, but businesses or people who do not create something themselves. They simply sit on the periphery and they review other people's creations and they make money off of that. Now, many moons ago, I used to go to schools and talk to kids about becoming a YouTuber. So when YouTube first launched, you didn't make any money off of it if you're a creator. So there were a lot of people who went viral in the early days of the internet and never saw a penny, or they only saw that money much later. But finally, YouTube decided to reward the people who are giving free content to their platform. And so you can make money off of the ads that people would watch or click on your channel, basically. And so we saw a number of YouTubers make a lot of money very quickly and become quite famous. And so there was a wave in which the top profession that kids wanted to go into was YouTuber, which probably is still a little bit true to this day. And during this phase of my career, I was running a media production business. And so I was asked by quite a lot of schools to go in and I would do a talk about why you shouldn't become a YouTuber, because who wouldn't take pleasure in going in and crushing kids' dreams? Now, I think the kids were about 14 years old. They weren't quite at the end of secondary school. I think they were in the middle of it. So it was quite interesting to them. And as you can imagine, as somebody who was working in the media, my point was that there were a lot of useful skills that you could pick up by doing YouTube as a hobby. But for the majority of people, it would be a hobby, and it was important to sort of not place all of your eggs in one basket and to think broader than that. And there's a lot of things in that presentation that still ring true today of the cottage industry. So my complaint, I guess, with people who are just commenting on what other people do is that they're not really creating anything themselves. They're not taking any creative risks. It's very easy to tear down somebody else's creation. And while there might be an entertainment value and it might be funny and interesting to watch reviewers, and it can be useful in telling us what we should do and what we should watch and what we should spend our time and money on, ultimately those people are not really creating anything, are they? They're just living off of somebody else's creation. My other points in the presentation were, one, it's highly competitive to become a YouTuber. It's almost like a lottery ticket win. It's really hard to stand out and gain such a large following. Millions of people try and very few succeed. The fact that they are so few to succeed makes the people who do make it stand out quite noticeably. It's an unstable income, so most YouTubers don't make a steady or reliable income. It can take years to start earning real money, and then normally not enough to live on. That earning is very much dependent on the algorithm, so it's changing constantly, meaning that your success is completely out of your control, and a small change can drastically reduce your views or earnings. And there's a constant pressure, because when I looked at the life cycle of YouTubers, what tends to happen is people they're not making videos consistently. They get really popular. They then make videos every single day or at whatever interval they need to make, so that they're constantly in the algorithm and they're constantly making new content. Then after about 2 years of this, there's a really high amount of them that burn out at that stage, because it's really difficult to come up with new content, especially if they are in this cottage industry where they're only commenting on what other people have done. And so you naturally run out because you're not creating anything yourself. Obviously, there's the sort of privacy concerns where, because you might become sort of famous, then your personal life is invaded, and anything that you can do can be seen through a lens where people are trying to sort of tear you down. YouTube, as with any social media, it's a very fast-paced platform, and so trends can constantly change. What's popular today might not be popular tomorrow, and so you constantly have to change your style and the content to stay relative. Obviously, short-form videos are very popular at the moment, but it used to be that you needed to have a video over 10 minutes to get that page, so you could have 2 adverts in there. And so people concentrated on long form content. Today they're probably concentrating on short form content, and so you're always having to change to fit your master, which is the algorithm. And then I guess just the other things is that many creators sort of feel isolated and anxious and depressed because their constant need to maintain popularity, because it's very much tied into their earnings. I also think that there's a case, especially with the cottage industries, where I really like Marvel content. I'm a big comic book nerd, and you see people who they make this content, it's very popular for a time, they get to a certain stage, and then when Marvel puts out some crap stuff, suddenly their views go down and they complain about it, and oh, we're not making the money, and oh, now we need you to subscribe to Patreon, or we need you to do something else, or give us some money, otherwise we can't keep making this content. It's like, well, yeah, because you're tied in completely to an algorithm which you do not control, a platform which you do not control, and you're commentating normally on one specific niche because that's how you gain popularity, and you don't control the popularity of that either. So it only takes a little bit of external changes, and suddenly your earnings have gone down quite significantly. It normally takes a team of people to put out content on such a regular basis, depending on the complexity of that content. You need somebody to certainly edit those videos, to make them, to script them normally, to come up with ideas, all this kind of stuff. And so a lot of YouTubers, they spend all this time and effort, and then their money diminishes because the thing that they were talking about goes down. And so I have a disdain of these people because they complain about these things. And I feel like, well, if you were making your own things, at least you could say that you were taking creative risks, you were saying something interesting or new, but all you're doing is talking about other people. But the same thing is very, very true in business. Why is it that we are so often, e-commerce businesses or different businesses, we're putting all of our eggs in a few baskets, in the same way that YouTubers put all of their eggs in the YouTube basket, and then one day an ad apocalypse happens where suddenly everybody gets restricted, or their earnings go down because one person did something bad. But we're all doing the same thing. We're all putting in our time and effort into LinkedIn, to outreach, and we concentrate on one channel a little bit too much. Normally there's a good reason for that. Normally it's because that channel is the most rewarding. But we all know that LinkedIn changes its algorithm all the time. We all know that LinkedIn might decide that, hey, we're getting tired of people posting selfies just to get attention. We're going to deprioritize that content. And so we're all constantly playing a game in which there are millions of competitors. We know that competitors are rising over the last 10 years because the internet is more accessible, because more people can create their own content with more ease. And yet there are only a few channels that we can use. And in fact, even today, while there might only be 4 or 5 channels, you can probably get a lot of headway by concentrating on one of the lesser known ones and becoming known in that particular space, rather than going to the popular one and trying to crack that algorithm. Because ultimately, I guess in LinkedIn, you're more likely to be featured if you are part of a big company, regardless of how useful your content is. Oh, you work for somebody that everybody knows. Great. Well, what you're saying must be more interesting to the audience, and we want to share that more than perhaps the more useful content made by smaller people. So what can we do about this? Well, I think we have to look at YouTubers in a weird way, and what they've done is probably the correct thing, is that they're not putting all of their eggs in that YouTube basket anymore. They're having to be on TikTok, they're having to be on Patreon, they're having to look at different revenue streams. Most of them started by offering sponsorships to brands, and then they realized that actually there's more money if they create their own brand. So a lot of them now, they sell merch, they sell their own products. Sometimes it's not related to what they're talking about at all. There's one comic book channel that I watch that has their own hot sauce. Okay, doesn't really relate to comics. You think you'd be wise to tightly align those things? That would make more sense to me from a business point of view. If you're going to be a comic book channel, why not open a comic book store, or why not open some sort of merch style? But they do hot sauce, so fair enough. And similarly, I know another channel, they talk to actors and they interview them, and it's very deep, but they sell like pet products on the side of that. But it must be working because they keep doing it. And so YouTubers have sort of paved the way in that they're always looking at different revenue streams and how that they can complement that unsteady income that they get from YouTube. We've also seen, of course, people like Mr. Beast, who quite famously, they'll make a video where they give away £2,000, and it's filmed in such a way that people get excited about it and they want to see and what's the challenge and all that kind of stuff. And so they make £2,000 off the advert. And if they do that, they then 100% risk all of their money by doing something bigger and doing it again. And we could end Mr. Beast's career today, in theory, if we just nobody watches the video. That's the high risk strategy that he's used. Obviously now he's got so many videos that wouldn't happen, but in the early days, if nobody watched the video, Mr. Beast wouldn't exist. And I'm sure that there's lots of people who tried to copy that formula and didn't. So what should we learn as a business? Well, it's really important when we're thinking about sales in particular that we're not concentrating too much on one particular source, because if that source suddenly has a problem, if it's source, I don't know, if you've got a partner and suddenly the partner finds somebody else and they can get more referrals from them, they're going to stop giving you those leads. If a partner is tied into a particular tool, for example, and that tool suddenly becomes less popular, then you're not going to get leads from that partner. And most relationships are reciprocal in nature. And so if you're not able to give leads to them, they might not give leads to you. And so it's really important from a business point of view that we focus on a nice mix of things. Now, it's very difficult sometimes because the more you add in, the more effort you have to do. The more effort you do, the less likelihood of return, because you are separating your focus to some degree. But the more we do that and then concentrate, especially in the early years of your business, of having a nice rounded approach to your prospecting, to where your leads are going to come through, the better it is, because if one of those falls off, you've always got the others. But too often what people do is they find something that works, they drill it for all it's worth, and then when it stops working, they're kind of in a bad place. And so today, if this rings true to you and you're putting too much eggs in one particular basket, be sure to start concentrating on a holistic approach to your sales funnel, basically. And how do you know that's working? Well, it's very easy. You just have a pie chart, and what you're looking for is a nice equal distribution of leads. What then happens sometimes, I find, is that your boss goes, oh, we've only had 3 leads from this particular channel, so don't concentrate on that, that's taking too much time. But actually, when you look at it, hey, getting 3 leads from that channel and 5 leads from this channel, it will all pan out in the end. Sometimes you have to spend a lot of time on one particular channel for it to work a little bit better. Those have been my thoughts of the week. I guess in a way I'm a huge hypocrite, because here I am commenting on people who comment on original content. Those are my thoughts. Thanks for watching.